All right, let's dive in. Today we're going to tackle some vocabulary, huh? From Acts chapters 12 through 16, 10 words. They might seem a little, well, ordinary at first glance, but trust me on this. They're the keys to, like, unlocking these chapters on a whole new level.
Yeah, it's like we're cracking a code, right? Revealing all these hidden, depths in these stories.
Exactly. And just to give you a sneak peek, we're talking persecution, miraculous escapes, these divine appointments, all kind of packed into these 10 words. Ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, word number 1, persecute. Now, this isn't just disagreeing with someone. This is like actively treating them cruelly and unfairly because of what they believe. And sadly, this is something that, we see throughout history, even today.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's used right away in Acts 12.1. Describes King Herod's actions against those early Christians.
Oh, right. All right.
And what's interesting is this persecution, it wasn't random. It was meant to, suppress a movement that was growing.
That's a good point. So it's not just about individual cruelty, but also power dynamics, trying to silence anyone who disagrees, huh?
Exactly. Makes you think about how this word, resonates even today when we see groups targeted for their beliefs. Whether it's religious or political, it's important to recognize that pattern of persecution.
Yeah. It's a reminder that freedom of belief, it's an ongoing struggle. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about commotion. This word just, paints a picture of noise and confusion and disorder.
You see it in Acts 12.18 when the angel suddenly appears in the prison, breaking Peter out.
Oh, right.
And the guards, it's pure commotion. They can't figure out what happened to Peter and all that chaos.
That's got to be one of the most dramatic prison breaks in history. But it makes you wonder, what was the purpose of all that commotion? Was it just a side effect of the angel's power? Or was there something more to it?
That's a good question. Maybe it was to distract the guards, right? Allow Peter to escape. Or maybe it was a way to show God's power, in a way that couldn't be ignored.
It wasn't just a quiet miracle, it was a show of force, disrupting everything.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. The word thorough. All about the details, being meticulous.
And we see it in Acts 16.25. Paul and Silas have just experienced that earthquake in prison.
Right.
And the jailer, he's afraid for his life, right? Conducts a thorough search to make sure all the prisoners are still there.
Talk about pressure. But it's interesting how the word thorough emphasizes, doing the job properly, even under pressure.
Almost like a commentary on the jailer's character, right? Even with all the chaos, he's still committed to his duty, checking every single cell.
Good observation. It's just a sense of responsibility, maybe even respect for how serious the situation is. All right, on to a word that's sure to bring up some feelings. Astonishment, being totally blown away by something you didn't expect.
And in Acts 12.16, you see it perfectly. The disciples are just in shock when Peter shows up at their door after escaping.
I can't imagine. They're grieving, praying for him, and suddenly, boom, he's there. It's a powerful moment that speaks to faith and the unexpected ways God works. But it also shows just how capable humans are of astonishment. Even when they see miracles, we're still surprised.
It's true. Sometimes it's hard to believe, even when it's right in front of you.
Right.
Okay, last word for this part. It's one that often causes debate. Contradict, going against what everyone thinks, challenging those norms, presenting a different view.
And that theme, you see it all through Acts. In Acts 14.2, you have Paul and Barnabas, and they're facing pushback. Some Jewish individuals who contradicted their teachings, stirring up trouble.
Sounds like they're facing some serious resistance. But it makes you think, why was their message so controversial? What about it was so threatening to people?
That's a great question. It takes us right into those cultural and religious tensions. Paul and Barnabas were challenging beliefs, practices that were deeply ingrained, and that led to, conflict. They were shaking things up.
Makes sense. So contradict isn't just about disagreeing. It's about challenging how things are and proposing something new.
Exactly. It's about that clash of ideas, the courage to stand up for what you believe in, even when people push back.
Back again. Still diving deep into these powerful words from Acts chapters 12 through 16. If you're just joining us, you might want to catch part 1 first, but if you're ready, let's keep going. We were talking about contradict and how it's not just about disagreeing. It's about challenging those norms, even if it gets you in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. And that leads us to a word that's, sadly, too common throughout history and even now, abuse. It's a tough topic, but an important one. In Acts 16.22, we see Paul and Silas. They're unjustly beaten, thrown in prison.
Right.
It reminds you that sometimes standing up for what you believe in can cost you.
It's hard to imagine going through something like that, especially when you've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But how do they respond? Did it, like, shake their faith
Yeah.
or make them even more determined?
That's a great question. And I think our next word gives us a hint. Persevere is all about continuing on, even when things were incredibly difficult. Despite the abuse, the imprisonment, Paul and Silas, they stayed strong in their faith and their mission.
So their faith was like a source of strength helping them get through it.
Exactly. And it led to something amazing. While they were in prison, they sang hymns, praised God, and then boom, that earthquake opens the prison doors.
Wow. Talk about turning a bad situation into a powerful moment.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about their own strength. Paul and Silas, they helped establish the early church.
Right.
And that brings us to a word that shows how important structure and leadership are. Ordain.
Yeah, ordain means to officially appoint someone to a sacred position. In Acts 14.23, we see Paul and Barnabas ordaining elders in each church they established. It wasn't just about giving people titles, it was about creating a system for guidance and support in these new communities.
So making sure these new churches had a solid base, both in their beliefs and how they were organized. But starting new churches from scratch, that must have been a huge job. Did they have a way to choose these leaders, like certain qualities they were looking for?
That's an interesting question. The text suggests they were looking for people respected in the community, strong in their faith, and committed to serving others.
Makes you think about what makes a good leader, right? Whether it's in a religious context or anywhere else. It's about integrity, dedication, a desire to help others. But those early churches, they must have faced challenges too. Spreading a new message often, well, shakes things up.
Absolutely. And that takes us to a word that captures that sense of disruption: tumult. It's about noise, chaos, often from a big, agitated crowd.
Like in Acts 19.29, the silversmiths in Ephesus start a riot against Paul.
Right. And what's interesting is this wasn't just random violence. It was rooted in economic and religious anxieties. The silversmiths, their work was tied to the worship of Artemis. They felt threatened by Paul's message.
So it was a clash of worldviews, the old ways versus the new. In all that chaos, how did Paul react? Did he try to fight back or look for a peaceful way out?
That's where our last word for this part comes in: restrain. To hold back, to control or limit something. In Acts 19.35, we see the city clerk of Ephesus. He steps in to restrain the mob, tries to calm them down, get them to think rationally.
It's like he's saying, hey, let's not lose it here. He's trying to bring back order. But was he really concerned about justice? Or was it more about keeping things under control, protecting his own interests?
That's a great question. It shows how even words that seem simple can have so much depth and make us consider different points of view.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We're looking at the vocab from Acts chapters 12 to 16. We've uncovered some pretty powerful stuff, right? From persecution to miracles, those challenges of spreading a new message when, well, not everyone's on board. But hold on, we're not quite done yet. We've got a few more words, each giving us a little more insight into those early Christians.
We've only just scratched the surface, haven't we? And this word persevere, we talked about it a bit, but it deserves a closer look. It's not just about dealing with tough times. It's about sticking to your purpose, your mission, your belief, even when it's hard.
And those early Christians, they had some seriously tough times. In Acts 14.22, Paul and Barnabas, they're actually encouraging those disciples to persevere in their faith. They knew persecution was coming.
Exactly. It wasn't some naive, everything will be fine kind of thing. They acknowledged the struggle and they urged them to hold on to their faith no matter what. And that message, it's not just for the early church, it speaks to us today too.
Yeah, it does. We all face those times, setbacks, challenges, those moments where you just want to give up. But persevering, holding on to hope, that's powerful, no matter what you believe.
Absolutely. And speaking of powerful astonishment, we often think of this word as a good thing, wonder and amazement. But in Acts 12.16, when Peter shows up after escaping prison, the disciples, their astonishment, is probably mixed with fear, disbelief, right?
It wasn't just, wow, cool. It was more like, wait, is this real? It must have been disorienting, to say the least.
Exactly. It makes you realize that astonishment, even when it's a good thing, can still be unsettling. It makes us face the limits of what we understand and accept that some things, well, we just can't explain them.
It reminds you that we don't have all the answers. Life throws some curveballs, things that shake you up. But in those moments, those astonishing moments, whether they're good or, a little scary, there's a sense of awe. You realize there's something bigger than yourself at play.
I like that. And speaking of something bigger, let's go back to commotion, We talked about that chaotic scene with Peter's escape, but commotion often happens when something unexpected disrupts things, throws everyone off.
You're right. It's rarely planned, is it? It's the sudden burst of energy driven by emotions, fear, excitement, maybe even anger.
And that makes me think about Ephesus when Paul's message starts causing trouble for those silversmiths. It wasn't just about money, it was about beliefs clashing, challenging the way things were.
Makes you wonder if commotion is sometimes a part of change, right? Like shaking up those old structures to make room for something new.
That's a great point. Maybe it's not always comfortable, but those moments of disruption, maybe they force us to rethink things, see different perspectives. Maybe commotion isn't something to fear, but a chance for growth.
Yeah, chance to change. Okay, last word, thorough. We talked about how it means attention to detail, but it also says something about integrity, about commitment.
Right. It's not just about being meticulous, it's about doing things right with purpose, taking responsibility. And in Acts 16.25, the jailer, after that earthquake, he conducts a thorough search to make sure everyone's accounted for.
Says a lot about him, right? Chaos, uncertainty, but he's still focused on doing his job, making sure nobody's missed.
It's a good reminder that even when crazy things are happening, even when things are uncertain, there's value in staying focused, doing what needs to be done, and doing it with care.
I agree. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Acts, chapters 12 through 16. It's been a journey exploring these 10 words, seeing how much they hold, and how they connect not only to the early church, but to us too.
It's been great exploring this with you, and I hope everyone listening walks away with a new appreciation for the power of language, for the depth of these stories, and how relevant they still are today.
Well said. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deep into the words and ideas that shape our world.